Yeah, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 244. Thank you for taking time out of your busy Monday nights to spend a little bit of it with us. I got loud at the end there.
You sure did.
Yeah, very excited about tonight's show, everybody. We have Sabrina Stanley, long overdue, getting her on the show. Absolute mountain crusher, badass. She won Hurt 100, just not this most recent weekend, but the weekend before in Hawaii. A brutal, very difficult 100-mile race, very technical, hot, humid. This year, she's run it before, too, so this was her first time winning it, which is just astounding and amazing because it is such a difficult race. And Hardrock, I don't know if you have heard of this race in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado. She won that in 2018 as well, which is pretty damn stellar. So having Sabrina on is going to be a joy. We're going to find out what it takes to train for such big races, such gnarly technical terrain. We're going to take all of your questions live, and it's going to be quite exciting. Welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 244. Here we go. Let's go.
Ginger Runner.
Yes. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 244. We are getting up there.
We are getting up there.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Good. I haven't seen you in so long. We don't talk to each other for the 6 days between the show.
Only Mondays.
That's
at
it.
6 p.m.
Yeah. I'm so excited about tonight's show. We have an incredible guest tonight, Sabrina Stanley, an absolute badass mountain crusher, ultra runner, athlete who a week and a half ago crushed the Hurt 100 in Hawaii, which is one of those brutal, technical, hot, humid 100-mile races that you hear legend of. Really high DNF rates, and just one of those difficult races that one day I want to run, but I'm also like terrified of running. We've run a little bit of it, a loop of it, and it's just like, holy crap, how do people run 100 miles of this? So we have Sabrina on tonight.
Yes.
And she
hear all about it.
Yeah, and she also won Hardrock last year, a little mountain race in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado. So she has quite the resume.
Yeah,
look her
I
up.
say not only that, but there's plenty of other number one places on her resume.
If you just look down her ultra sign up, for example, it's just first place, or podium. Like everything that she's run is like, oh wow. Oh, yeah, she's legit. So having her on tonight is going to be super awesome. I can't wait to find out what it takes to run and win these races. Pretty sweet. Before we even get started, though, we'd like to thank some very particular people who help make this show happen week in and week out. Obviously, we don't have brand support, stuff like that. We are viewer supported. So our Patreon crew, those who support us on a monthly basis, are the reasons that we are able to do this show, our reviews, our films, everything. So thank you to our Patreon supporters. And 3 in particular at that top tier help these episodes happen week in and week out. Rick Bjarnason and his team at cheekymonkeymedia.ca, they're in British Columbia. They just redesigned the gingerrunner.com website. And I say just because it is live. And you can go.
It's live.
And you can go check it out. Brand new Ginger Runner.
Pretty, too.
It's damn pretty. Gingerrunner.com website. There's a couple server things that because he's a super pro and we're like upgrading some server stuff, so there's a couple little like video things that need to be updated, but otherwise go check it out, dance on it, see what it's about. Dance on it?
I don't know what that means.
Me neither. So big shout out to Rick and his team at Cheeky Monkey Media for redoing that site. Brian Sands, obviously someone that we mention here every week, just a wonderful supporter, wonderful human being, ran his first marathon 2018. Man, time. 2017, ran his first 50K in 2018, training for his first 50 miler in a couple of months. Just a wonderful human. So big shout out to him. And Chris Lee in Hong Kong and his community at the Trailblazer community there, showcasing the trails in Hong Kong and everything that Hong Kong has to offer for trail runners and endurance athletes. Wonderful guy who's been supporting us for a long time as well. So shout out to them and to all of our Patreon crew. Okay. Not only is it myself, not only is it our guest, Sabrina Stanley, who I'll introduce here in just a couple of seconds, but of course, we're joined by Kim.
Hi, guys. I'm also here.
How are you?
I'm good. There's lots of chatter happening in the chat room already. Just a reminder to you all watching, we are live. We do have Sabrina here with us. If you guys have questions, please pop them in the chat room, and we'll be sure to snag as many of them throughout the hour as we can.
Yes. It's going to be a fun show. And of course, because it is live, we love to interact with you guys. So if you have questions for Sabrina, drop them on in there. Without further ado, she comes to us from Colorado. We'll find out more about where, because like right now, I thought she was like, I was like, your house is so well organized and you have a lot of smart wool socks and everything like that. But without further ado, here she is, Sabrina Stanley.
Yay!
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I wore my Seattle attire specifically for the show.
Oh, you're rubbing it in.
Between this and Mariners.
You're rubbing in the Sonics. Oh, miss them.
We'll be back one day.
Hopefully.
Yeah, there's lots of talk around the city because we're getting a new hockey team. So everyone's like,
Right.
screw basketball. It's all about the hockey right now. But the Sonics, just miss them. It'd be great if our hockey team was called the Sonics. That's what they should do. Where are you coming to us from, Sabrina? Because if you pan around, your house is so well organized.
Well, so yeah, I broke into the local running store and was not able to get permission from the owner quite yet. So if the cops come knocking, I think I'm okay, but we'll see. They have better Wi-Fi here, so.
I was going to say that's actually a benefit to doing a live show is that if the cops do come, we'll get to watch it play out. Hopefully that doesn't happen.
Sure.
Just so everyone knows.
A very exciting Ginger in her life.
Yeah. Sabrina Stanley is in a running store, but everything's okay. It's not someone trying to rob the place. So one, long overdue. Getting you on the show, for sure, long overdue. You have had quite the fantastic ultra running career, and it's like I feel like it's just getting started. I feel like, especially within the last 2 years, we've just seen you win, and you have some big goals this year. Let's start kind of looking back a little bit. What really got you into this sport? And when was it that you realized, I love this, and this is something that I really want to try to excel at?
Yeah, I was just a runner, like a road runner in Washington, and then moved to Colorado. There wasn't really a lot of roads where I was living in Breck that were safe to run. It was just the highway. So I had to run trail, and I'd heard of Leadville 100. When I realized I was living literally right next door to it, I'm like, oh, I'll throw my name in the hat and see what happens. It was drawn. And so that was kind of my introduction to ultra running was Leadville, and I DNF'd at mile 87. And I just felt something in me that I know I can do so much better. And so I decided to work on it, and I reached out for help from Avery Collins and was like, how do you train for these races? And the rest is kind of history. So yeah, just trying to improve on each race prior.
It's crazy to hear. I really wanted to get into ultra running, so Leadville, I wanted to try it at Leadville. Like those who watch the show know, we've talked about Leadville on the show and stuff like that before. Obviously, altitude is one of the big components of it. So is the 100-mile distance. Like it's 100 miles at altitude. A lot of people run it. It's very difficult. What drew you to that as opposed to like a 20-miler or something just kind of around the backyard mountains?
Yeah, well, I'd done 4 or 5 road marathons. And when I first read of Leadville 100, I think I was 21. And I said, by the time I'm 40, I will have ran 100 miles in one race. And that was my goal. And then, like I said, when I knew it was next door, I'm just like, well, I guess now is better than never. And so I just threw my name in. And when it was drawn, I had only gone a marathon. And so a friend of mine said, you should probably do a 50. So I did a 50, and then I don't know.
You should probably run further than a marathon first.
Yeah, and like looking back, I thought I barely trained for the 50, so I'm like, oh, that was easy enough. And the 100 really kicked my butt the first time I ever did it.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of really eye-opening. So next race, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it right. And the second time went drastically better. Yeah, I just wanted to see what I was capable of. And when I did Leadville, I honestly didn't know. Like I'd heard of Western, but I thought Leadville was like the epitome of ultra running. I'd never heard of Hardrock or thought there's like 200s in the whole entire country. I was very green to the sport. Clearly, as you get deeper and deeper, you realize like the race options are unlimited. Now it's like I can't get enough races in to experience them all.
I I feel like that's a growth thing that every ultra runner goes through is they figure out their first ultra and they run it and they're like, this is it. Like, this is the big race. I know it is. And then you start hearing about, oh, no, this has been around for decades. And even now, there's a great Twitter account of ultra running history and stuff. You see these tweets about ultra races that took place, 100 years ago. And you're like, what? It's been around so much longer than I ever thought. It's pretty awesome when you figure that stuff out. So what were some of the things you like? I can only imagine getting to mile 87. Congratulations in your first big race like that. What are some of the lessons that you learned from that experience that you took with you into your next experience?
So many. One is caffeine. I didn't know caffeine was a thing with running. And so I was falling asleep, hallucinating on the trail. I think I set my half marathon PR the first time I ran Leadville. And so
pacing was
completely out the window. And at the time I was like, look how fast I'm going. Like, I'm just going to crush this race. And so obviously that really caught up to me. Those were like the two main things. And then nutrition and everything else kind of comes later. But yeah, I'd say pacing and caffeine were my two biggest downfalls during my first 100.
So when did you start discovering these more difficult races and what drew you to them? Because it's not like you're handpicking, oh, I'm going to do this easy, super fast, buffed out single track race. It's like you're just looking at your ultra sign up and looking at your resume, like you're drawn to these really difficult, challenging races. When did you discover that ability to do these things?
Yeah, well, once I find out like other people have accomplished it, I'm like, oh, then I can too. And so that was when I first heard about Leadville. They kind of build it as the hardest 100 you've ever ran. And, they do a really good job of promoting like this tough mountain 100. So it's like, this is the hardest thing I can do. So once I did that, then you start hearing about, Hardrock, and you realize the vertical gain on that, or Hurt, and all these different aspects. Even Badwater is kind of like a little bit down on the list. Anything that is just insanely tough for whatever reason, like kind of piques my interest. I'm like, I just want to know what it's like to have that feeling that these other runners are getting, like what drives them. And I don't know, it's just such a magical experience to accomplish something like that. So I think anything that's like extremely challenging, I'm kind of drawn towards.
Sweet. And yeah, shout out to Avery Collins, who I know you mentioned already. Kim and I think our first experience seeing him was at Hurt a couple of years ago when we filmed it. And it was just like seeing this young kid come through the aid station, not winded, barely sweating.
Looked like he was just having a good time.
Just having a good time. He had like his whole posse there, and it was like, how are you smiling? Like, how are you having fun? Like, hurt. It was really pretty cool to see, and he crushed it that year too. I want to remind everyone that we are, of course, live with Sabrina Stanley. So if you have any questions for her about her racing, her training, anything like that, drop into the chat room and let us know. Kim, what do we got?
Yeah, a question from Kim in the chat room. Kim asked, question for Sabrina. How well did living and training in the San Juan Mountains all summer prepare you for your summer and fall racing?
It was incredible. Like, I kind of threw tempo run, speed workout, anything out the window. And all I did was go out and just run every day at whatever pace I felt I wanted to. There was no structure. It was just, I'm going to go out, and I told Avery I'd be back by 7:00 or whatever. And so I'll be back by that time. But it was just exploration and it was a lot of power hiking. It was just kind of exploring the San Juan Mountains nonstop. We lived in a little camper, and we just loved that whole experience so much that we're actually moving back there at the end of April to do the whole process again. This time we will probably have an apartment and not a camper. But
was it like San Juan, a bus?
No, it was like a 8-foot, it was a scamp. If you know what a scamp is, It's basically a tin shell. There was no running water, no electricity. It was a bed on wheels. That was it. So in the mornings, you'd like wake up and crawl out and go pee and hope that like you're camped far enough away from anybody else to see you. Visit the local coffee shop, maybe use their toilets, use their Wi-Fi. And then we'd shower
in
anywhere
creeks,
from every...
kind of one of those things.
Well, Uray has hot springs, and so it's like $1.50 or $1 to use their showers. Which, for how cheap it was, we probably should have used more than we did. But yeah, it was just us out there in the mountains. We didn't care.
That's awesome. I mean, talk about like full on dirt bagging it. Like that is there are people who are working full 9-to-5s, great salaries right now, who are like, I want that. Like, I want to live in a scamp in the San Juan Mountains. So as much as it's like, oh, showers, you don't get them very often.
Right.
Man, that's the life, though. That's the mountain
Well,
life.
like, wake up with the sun, go to bed with the sun, and, play cribbage before bed. We didn't have a TV or anything. I miss it so much because coming back to like society almost, I just, in a weird way, I feel like less connected with Avery, you know what I mean? Because we're doing our own thing and we're going to the gym and whatever else. We're like in our little camper, it was just so peaceful and simple.
Yeah, there's that element of small space cohabitation that just everything is that much more intense. And like when you come back to society, it's like when we're on vacation or something, right? You're on vacation, you're just kind of, this is our life, this is our world. And you come back to your regular life and it's like, well, see you later. It's great. It's great to hang out for a while. Let's get to some more live questions and then we'll start talking about Hardrock last year and then Hurt this year.
Yeah, since you were just talking about Avery, Kim actually had another question in the chat room. Kim says, how often do you and Avery train together? How do two elite athletes find balance in each other's triumphs and struggles?
So training together kind of comes and goes with what races we have coming up and where we are in our training blocks. So like when we trained last year for Hurt, we ran together a lot. The San Juans, I'd say we ran together like 2 times a week. Yeah, it just kind of depends on the time of year and what we have coming up. He's recently been recovering from TDG, and so he's been going super, super light. He's actually he jumped in and paced me at Hurt, which was a big surprise to me because we had planned on him doing like the last 7 miles, and I think he ended up doing 17. And so, yeah, it comes and goes, and sometimes it's nice not to just to be by yourself out there because when we're training together, he's obviously cutting back a little bit to keep so that he's running with me, like he's a little bit faster. So yeah, it's just kind of what we have going on. There's a second part to that. Sorry, I forgot it. I feel like maybe.
Yeah, he just said, how do two elite athletes find balance in each other's triumphs and struggles?
Yeah, I would say he's so amazingly supportive. You have to keep reminding yourself you are on the same team no matter what. And I think when you first meet somebody, you're in that honeymoon stage and you maybe project who you are onto them to make them this amazing, like godlike creature. Not that he's not, but after so many months go by and you realize his vision or his dreams are different than yours or the ones that you projected onto them. And so it's kind of accepting them for who they are, not who necessarily you want them to be. So we've been together, I think, 2.5 years now. Yeah, something like that. And he's just such a great communicator. And I really give him credit for our relationship for that because I'm not. I get stubborn and pissy. And I'm like, I shut down really easy. And I'm like, just don't talk to me. And he'll be like, no, let's work this out. What's going on? And so he's pretty incredible.
I feel like that's always a really interesting topic and a good topic to talk about on the show is, we are both ultra runners and, we've been married now for a number of years and been together for longer than that. But we have guests on the show who have or are in relationships with other ultra runners. And so it's really interesting to see how that dynamic plays out because, sometimes maybe one of them is an elite and the other one is not, or maybe they both are elites or they're both not. And the dynamic is always interesting.
Or one is injured and one is not, or one is having a great season and one is not. Yeah.
So it's always good and interesting to hear that because I think our viewers are in all varieties of relationships with ultra runners or non-runners and that sort of thing, and so I'm always fascinated by it. With Hardrock last year, so did you train on the course specifically for the course? Was it one of those things where you talked about living in the scamp for a long time? Was that specifically for Hardrock? Was that your A goal for the year? And how did that play out for you in real time? Obviously, the results speak for themselves, but I'm just curious in your mind how that all played out in relation to the training and the dedication to the actual event.
Yeah, so we camped most of the time in Ouray just because the spots we found were more accessible and you don't have to go over $1 million highway 1,000 times for groceries or anything like that. So I trained the course surrounding Ouray. I knew really, really well. there's multiple other sections that I'd only been over maybe once or twice the entire summer. There's even a 6-mile section that I wasn't able to get on. So I made Avery go run that because he was going to pace me during that section anyway.
Right.
And I really wanted him to know what was going on if I didn't. So I think for me personally, knowing a course helps me immensely. Just knowing what's around the bend, how to pace myself down this hill, if I can just send it or if I should hold back, or, you know, whatever, like, should I eat right here because I won't have time later because I really want to push it. Just so many little factors come into play. And so I wanted to know the course as much as possible. And then on top of that, I keep journals of all my runs. And so, like, I'll go back and look what I did for Leadville or Western and see what worked and what didn't. And so I kind of build my plan off that for each day. And then studying, like, I've listened to every single Ginger Runner podcast that has mentioned Hardrock. Every single one. Okay, like, where were their pitfalls, or what did they think they did really well, and can I incorporate that? So it's just knowledge, and as much knowledge as you can get on the course from as many runners as possible,
right?
Just to learn. And so I took all that, and then I also studied my competitors and what their past races were and what I thought they were going to do on the course. So with all that information, I kind of mapped out how the race was going to go before it started. And it went, my time wasn't what I was looking for, but as far as the other competitors, like, I would say it went better than I had anticipated.
That's exactly what my next question was going to be, is because we talk, you're familiar with the Hardrock episodes that we have on the show where we talk to people who run it. Usually either the week before, like we've talked to Dale and a lot of people who are prepping for the race, and we talked to a lot of people who have just completed it. And it's always interesting to hear those stories of, well, here's what I was expecting and here's what happened. Or people who have done it a number of times, they go into it knowing you just can't predict anything. Like, you can't say, here's my list, here's my plan, because there's just so much that is out of your control at Hardrock. Hardrock's one of those races that just, it'll give it to you, and it'll give it to you more, and you won't expect it. So in this case, talking to you now, I'm like, okay, she had a plan, and following along in real time, it was like, holy crap, Sabrina's just nailing everything. So did it play out to plan, or does your plan involve some sort of flexibility? So as things begin to unfold, like, what if it was a foot race between you and another, female athlete, and how would you have dealt with it at that point? How did that play out last year?
Yeah, so I went into it looking to go sub 30. And I knew the paces I wanted to run to get there. I just was out of it, I guess, and was completely missed 2 hours on my, like, every time I did the math for my time, I was 2 hours slower than I actually was. And so I didn't realize what pace, I thought I was going to finish in like a 32 to 34 hour pace until mile like 96. And we were running down this long gravel, like, service road to the finish. And I turned to Avery and I said, I'm so sorry that I had this shitty race. And I was like almost in tears. And I'm like, I thought I was going to do so much better. It just didn't work out that way. Like, I was happy I was winning, but I really thought everyone was going to look back at 2018 Hardrock and be like, it was kind of handed to her, like, she didn't have to run that fast. And he's like, what are you talking about? You have this much time to get to the finish and you're at a 30-hour pace. And I'm like, no. And I start arguing with him and I'm like, look, my watch says this. And he's like, no, you. And I realize he's correct. And I wished I had been more aware of my time earlier on, which is just my own mathematical skills at air. Because I think I definitely would have broke 30 if my last 15 miles were really rough mentally. And so, which kind of makes me happy, because that means there's room for improvement going back. If I had ran a perfect race, and I'd be really scared to go back, because, like, how do you improve on a perfect race? But I think there's definitely some wiggle room there. So yeah, the last 15 miles did not play out as planned, but yeah.
It's what's crazy is, like, as an outsider who's watching the race play out in real time, like, we don't see that stuff, and we don't see, the stuff that you're dealing with internally and in the mind and that sort of thing. It's still just to us as, like, Sabrina crushed it. Like, yeah. She had the perfect day and everything was dialed. Going well. Everything's going well. So I'm curious how you were going to use your Hardrock 2018 experience going into 2019. Was there anything that you learned going into this one that you're going to apply to this next year? I'm just really am big on this. What are the lessons that we're learning from these experiences when we're pushing our bodies, our minds to the absolute limit in especially such extreme areas like the San Juan Mountains? So what are you going to take with it, or take from it from last year and apply towards this year?
Yeah. So like I said, I think I just mentally I started to fall apart physically the last 15 to 20 miles. And I think that it really showed mentally. I'm a huge proponent of like never, ever stopping no matter what. Even if you're just walking, it's better than, stopping and feeling sorry for yourself. And there's this one huge climb up Little Giant. And I stopped twice and just leaned over my trekking poles, and I don't know what I was stopping for. Like it was literally just to feel more pain. Like if I had just kept walking, that's 30 seconds here, or 5 minutes there, or whatever. And then my feet, they got wet. I changed socks at mile 60-ish, and I really wish I'd changed them earlier because they get wet at mile 2, obviously. And I think if I had taken the time to take care of my feet earlier, then I could have ran faster later. And then for whatever reason, my knee was really bothering me, and it always does, like after mile 50. And at Hurt, it was like I'd never had a knee problem my entire life. I don't know what happened.
Wow.
And I'm really, really optimistic for this year because I physically have never felt better. And so, I mean, we'll see what happens at Hardrock this year, but I think just, staying mentally focused, taking care of your feet, and then, hoping your body holds up.
I think it's a great segue to start talking about Hurt, because Hardrock, incredible race, very difficult, obviously. Hurt, also very difficult. One of those, but in a different way, in the sense that you don't deal with altitude. You certainly deal with elevation gain and really technical trails and, humidity and all that sort of thing. You've run Hurt, Hurt. What draws you to that experience, especially with the loops, and it's just such a different monster. What really drew you back this year, especially after placing third last year, which is just awesome? What brought you back?
Yeah, so I'd never heard of Hurt until Avery, and he ran it, I want to say 2016, and he was going
okay, that
back
is when we
last
saw
year.
him. Yeah, that is when we saw Avery just crushing it, making it look easy. It's like, how? Yeah.
Yeah, and so he was going back in 2018, and because he wanted to improve upon his race. Like, well, if I'm going to be out there, I'm going to run it with you. Like, this seems like a really badass race. But I wasn't invested in it. Like, I mean, I was running it because he was. There was no real, like, oh, I found this race myself, and this is my dream race or anything like that. I was just like, oh, I'll go run 100 miles in Hawaii with you.
Yeah.
So I didn't go into it with a plan. Like, I had no idea what finish times were for females. I had no idea what my pacing strategy should look like. I mean, I just didn't know what to expect besides like surface level information. So running it, I was like, I just didn't do it right. There's a river crossing, and again, you cross it 5 times, and I didn't change socks once the entire race. And I really wish I had. And then, I don't know, I was just kind of out there running. Like, there was no real agenda. And so this year I took like the same approach I did at Hardrock. Like, I started studying other times. I started studying videos. I started mapping out my own pace chart and what I wanted to do. And I really contemplated, like, how do I make my feet healthy for the entire run? Just all these little things that make huge, vast differences in time when you implement them, I guess. So this year I just went in with a plan, really.
And, you also had some stout competition. I mean, Candace and Tiny D and all these people who have run this race before and just absolutely crush it. Going into it, did you have that strategy in place too, of like, there's going to be 10 women, that's my main competition, and I'm going to go there and I need to strategically do this? Or is this one of those races as well where you're like, I could go in with a plan, but I need to be flexible on it?
Yeah, so I looked at the women. I knew their past races. I knew who had beat them in their past races or who they'd beat, and I'd raced those similar women. So, like, how do I match up to them? Because I'd never really raced any of them head on. Candace was at Hurt last year, and for my speed, she started out really fast, and I was trying to keep up with her. And so going in this year, I thought she'd probably stick with her same speed that she started last year. And I really wanted to dial it back this year and just run my own race, worry about my own finish time. And if I can do this lap at this pace and so on and so forth, then at the end it'll even out. But like, I can't like try and keep up with anybody this first lap. And so that was like in the back of my head nonstop is, who cares who's in front of you? Like, you can run this first lap as slow as you want because you're just saving your gas for later.
Right.
And I think I nailed it this year. Like, I really held back and just tried to remain as comfortable as long as possible in my own pace.
I mean, 28 hours, 28 minutes on that course is nuts. I mean, it's
and
nuts.
And also like a year that like all we were hearing from the outside was how extremely muddy it was this year as well.
Yes. I mean, you're like guaranteed of mud, rain of some sort, just moisture all around you, whether it's creek crossings or just the humidity, the heat, bugs. Like, there's all sorts of elements to this race that just make it like, come on. But this year, the mud, and we've heard from people like Ken Michael and people who run this race very often, they're just like, it was the most mud I've ever seen in my life. How did that play into the strategy? And did you just have to ignore it? Or like, what did you end up doing with all that mud?
So you're right. It was stupidly muddy, but it was awesome because like I wasn't expecting that, and so it's like, oh, one more obstacle for everybody else. Because I don't consider myself a super fast runner, so I like slow mountain races. And so if there's something that's going to slow down the fast runners, then I'm all about it. And I've been running in snow all winter here, which is just kind of the same, I guess. And so I mean, there was like, you would fall down in the mud and then it's on your hands. And so then you wipe it on the tree. And so you're grabbing trees that everybody else has already wiped their mud on. So the trees get like super slimy. And it's like then you have like mud on your hands and it's on your face because it was just everywhere. And then by like, because it's a looped course with multiple out and backs, so many runners were just churning it up that by mile or lap 4 and 5, it was a disaster zone. And by that time, your legs are shaky and they're not super stable. So you're like running down these pitches on the edge of cliffs in mud, and your pace was super slowed down. And then all the rocks got covered in mud and now they're slimy. So it was definitely an adventure. There was, I came the closest I've ever come to dying while running.
Oh, come on.
This year.
Oh, no.
So I'm running, and if anybody knows the course, it was like a half mile past where you cross the road up high. And so there's like these cliffs to your right, and it was a relatively non-technical part of the trail. And there's like this huge tree root that was probably like 3 or 4 inches high that came out from the side of the trail on your right and like sloped down to the left. And I stepped right on it, and my feet just like went out from under me towards the cliff. And I grabbed the root, and I was literally like hanging from the cliff, like just my hands up above me. And it's middle of the night. And so I like hoist myself up there. I don't know if I would have died, but I'm sure I would have like shattered my pelvis or something, because it was covered with greenery, but it was not a hillside. It was a cliff down. And I come into the pirate aid station. I'm like, oh my God, you guys, like, I mean, it woke me up, which was, I guess, a blessing, but I was literally hanging off a cliff. And if it had been daylight, I think I'd been a lot more freaked out. But I mean, I had, I think, 2 more loops. And so every time I ran by that spot, I was like checking it out to see
just
the drop.
tiptoeing.
Yeah.
Just, I'm going to live. I mean, in the few sections that we ran, I think we ended up doing like 20 miles or something of this course when we were there filming and crewing and stuff like that. So we got to see all these sections, and there are some like legitimate, well, when you say technical trails, like anyone that says technical trails now, after you see Hurt, like the scale has changed. Everything just changes. You're
Right.
like, well, yeah, technical is all relative because, I mean, Hurt's kind of it. There's, different levels to technicality of trails and stuff. And then you start taking into danger of trail falls and things. So when you are describing your accident, it's like, I think I know that route, the specific route that you slipped on, because there's just these moments when you're on these trails, you're like, oh, this is a really dangerous section. Now imagine it at 3 a.m. after 3 or 4 loops under your legs.
Right.
Crazy. Well,
Yeah,
we're glad you made it.
If you do fall, like, who's going to find you and how long will it take?
Right.
Because they could be waiting at the aid station for hours thinking you just have a bad section or something. And then, I don't know. Anyway.
Well, I remember when we were there, we also heard stories from the runners of like, oh, I found, I'm making up a name, but I found Bob laying off to the side of the trail, like hanging onto a tree stump. And when I passed him, he's like, can you help me? Because he was waiting for the next runner to run by. You know, you hear those stories and you're like, that's fake. Like those aren't real stories, but it hurt. They're real.
The jungle's so dense too that my biggest fear is having your headlamp go off in the middle of the night. And my first year I ran it, my pace center, I came across a guy who's just wandering around in the middle of the jungle in the dark. And I was like, do you have spare batteries? And I'm like, no, mine's a rechargeable. So, and he was just trying to keep up with every runner that came by him until they dropped him. And then he'd wait for the next runner. And that had to be so terrifying. Even at like 3 p.m., it's dark in there in certain sections.
Yeah.
It's so dense.
Yeah, if the sun sets at 5 in the jungle, it sets at 3. Like you don't have the luxury. That's crazy. Let's get to some live questions because there's a really active chat room right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. There's a question from Brian in the chat room. Brian asked, with you doing so well with ultras in mountains and at Hurt, are you looking at going to UTMB or other similar races overseas?
Yes. So next year I'd like to do UTMB. TDG is also really high on my list. Just after crewing it, it's, to me, I am not aware of a harder foot race out there that's one go. I mean, it's Hardrock times 2 with more intense grades. I just cannot fathom what those runners go through, and so I'd really like to give it a go. I've never done 200, so the sleep thing is very intriguing to me.
Right.
The only thing that scares me is just recovery time. Or, I mean, I would have done it this year or next year, but it's like I want to do UTMB while I'm like really fresh and super healthy, and I can completely just trash my body at TDG and then take 6 months or a year off or whatever.
I mean, you have, what's great is you also have a great friend, Avery, who is able to give you a lot of that insight too, because he just finished TDG and just watching that play out is like, holy crap, that just destroyed Avery, who's a badass. You know, it just rips people to shreds. And I love that is what excites you about it. Like, well, I'm sitting here going, yeah, I would never do TGG. It's too hard. Like, why would I ever want to put myself through that? But we get to talk to guests like you who are like, that's awesome. I'm leaning into that. Like, I'm going to send it at TDG and I'm going to just thrash my body. Like, that's awesome. That's so cool to hear that.
First race. Yeah, it's the first race I've ever like encountered that I'm truly like scared or gives me butterflies that the course will beat me and not myself mentally or not my body.
Right.
Like it, in essence, could just not be doable for some people. And like that's scary to me. And I want to see if like I'm one of those people or not. Because he started running at noon on Sunday and finished Thursday morning. That blows. And he took 10th or 11th, I think. 11th. But still, that's insane. I can't comprehend that time frame.
I would finish in 4 weeks.
I know. You think about like starting on a Sunday and finishing on a Thursday. You're like, okay, well, on Monday we do Ginger Runner Live. We do our errands on Monday. We get groceries. Like you plan your whole day,
right,
each day by day. But then he's out there running in the mountains for that long. That's
non-stop. Yeah.
Will you please come on the show before and after you do TDG?
I would love to.
We'll do it before and after. We'll do the whole comparison.
2021.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love hearing that this is like this again, it's just the beginning. It's kind of what we're talking about at the top of the show with Sabrina. It's like we're just scratching the surface of what the waves that she's going to make, which is pretty exciting. Let's get to a couple more live questions.
Great question from Nathaniel. Nathaniel asked, Sabrina, in an interview, you said, I want to be known as a super competitive female in the sport. When people see my name on a race docket, I want them to be scared. Does this mindset help you push?
It does. And I thought everybody just thought like this. Like, I just think that everybody's going into a race, no matter what level you are. Because when I ran marathons, I was a middle of the packer. I mean, my marathon PR on road is like 3:41. But every time I went, I'm like, maybe the entire front of the field will get lost. Or maybe like just something crazy is going to happen and I'm going to bust out this win, even though it was never in the cards for me as a road marathoner. But like, there's always that dream. And so every time I enter an ultra, I'm like, what if there's that girl who just has this crazy dream and like, this is her day. I didn't realize, like, maybe everybody does think like that, but the more I like talk to people and their reactions when I say stuff like that, I'm just like, maybe it's not normal,
But just from like being on team sports, like that's how your coaches, you know, like hype you up. And so I think I've just transferred that into a solo sport. But I mean, I think everybody should be out there like hoping for their dream day.
It's interesting perspective, because I don't hear that and think, oh wow, this person has such an ego, they're gonna like come out and be like, I want people to fear me. I don't think that's what you mean at all in that, because what you just said, I'm like, I actually think that, like the 15-mile bridle trails run that we did the other week, in my mind I'm going, I think I'm gonna win this. Like I'm just gonna show up and win it. People are gonna be like, how did the ginger runner win? He's slow. You know, there's that mindset of like, today's the day, like this is going to happen.
Right.
The front 30 people are going to get lost, and I'm going to win this local race. And I don't think of that as like me being or having an ego or anything like that. I just think of it as a dream. I like that. That's kind of how you put it, is having a dream, and everyone should have that sort of thing. I love that. I would say that if people see my name on the list, they're usually like, oh, I'm just going to go kick his ass. I'm just going to go beat him, and then they can brag about it. So I wish I was as fast as you.
Like I said, I like hard mountain hundreds because I don't see myself as fast. But before 2018, I'd never won a race over a 5K. And the 5Ks I had won was like a Santa race and like a resolution run. Like they were, you know, 5K races. They were just like fun runs that I was taking way too serious.
Right.
And so when I came into 2018, like my goal at Hurt last year was like, I just want to win 100. That's all I want to do. And then I won Hardrock, and I was like, okay, I want to win a 50K, and like 2018 just worked out really well where I won at the distances I wanted to. And so we'll see what happens now.
I think that's what's pretty cool is every race but one that you ran last year, you won, and you still podiumed. Like I said, go to Sabrina's Ultra sign up and just enjoy it, because it's like, wow, this is the beginning of something pretty cool. And I love that you're not one to shy away from the bigger challenging races. If anything, those are the ones that you are more excited about. And that's what makes me really excited about having you on the show and seeing what you're going to be doing and stuff like that. Let's talk a little bit about your plans for this year. I know people are going to be really curious as to what you're racing, what you're planning on racing. Are you building? Was Hurt just the beginning? Was Hurt the A goal? What's next?
Yeah, so obviously Hurt, and then Hardrock is my A race this year. Last year, I mean, I've heard a few just like comments from runners that I really have respected in the sport about the races I picked weren't super competitive. Or weren't, I don't know, like I just had a really lucky good year. And so this year I'm like, okay, I'm going to go into Hardrock. Well, first I'm going to go into Hurt. I'm going to do as well as I can. I'm going to go into Hardrock, and I'm going to throw it, like I'm going for it at Hardrock. And now it's kind of like this year I really want to focus on making my training races maybe step it up a notch. Not that my training races last year, there's anything wrong with them. But I could see where they could be picked apart as, you know, who I was running against or who I wasn't running against. So I'm going to do Cruel Jewel 50. Well, I hope so. I'm 21st or 2nd on the wait list. And see how that goes. I'm looking at 50Ks right now. They're all training runs for Hardrock. But, you know, like what's a nice balance between a course that suits me and a competitive race at the same time? Because, I mean, the end goal is Hardrock. So I'm not going to give up my training for Hardrock to win a 50K. And after Hardrock is kind of up in the air, I really want to do a competitive, like, fall race, and then maybe a 50K for training for that race. But honestly, I haven't looked past Hardrock at the moment. That's kind of...
I can imagine that's kind of the all-encompassing. Yeah. I mean, it's Hardrock. So that actually brings up an interesting question, because in my mind, I'm like, Sabrina, do you like you've been doing you for years as far as picking the tough races and racing these races, and I didn't realize people were giving you grief about well those aren't very competitive races or that sort of thing, because I'm like it doesn't have to be about your fellow competitor as much as it can be about literally competing against the course, like you mentioned with TDG and stuff like that. But I am curious, so does that mindset, or is that influencing you to steer away from flatter or faster 50Ks, or is that a training choice? Is it specifically because that doesn't benefit the bigger projects that you have, or is there a fear in that the results might not be what you want?
Yeah, I mean, flatter, faster races, let's say Western, for example, like I want to go back, and I was actually talking about this with my brother the other night. Like I want to go back and I want to win it. But realistically, in my mind, to make that happen, I have to hit it on the right weather year. I have to hit it on the right competitor year, and I have to have the perfect race. So that, I mean, I would like it to be a 1-year project, but I think for that to realistically happen for me, I'm looking at a 5 to 10 year project. And so I think I can go to Hardrock and bust it out in a year and win it and be done with that race. And so I'm going to run it both directions, obviously. But
right.
So I'm like Hardrock, I'm okay, like moving away from, because I've kind of had my piece there. I can never go back and be completely fine. Like Western's still on the hit list, but my training would need a complete overhaul, and I'd have to focus. Like I don't think, like I'm not Courtney DeWalter. Like I'm not, my body, I don't know. I just, in my mind, I have to focus on one race, and everything goes towards that one race. And whether that's mental or physical, that's just how I operate. And so when Western does come around, it's not that I can't compete at fast flat races. It's just that I can't do both. And so right now it's mountains, and I'll focus on mountains. And then when Western comes around, then I'll start competing at flat, faster 50s and so on.
It's interesting to have that conversation because, you know, we also see these races like States and Lake Sonoma and all these really fast. It's crazy to call these races fast, too, because they're still difficult. You know, you still have Lake Sonoma is hard. You know, it's got over 10,000 feet of gain. It can be really hot and humid down in the valley and stuff like that. But it's really interesting to see these times just get faster and faster, both men and women's times. Of course, records getting broken and that sort of thing. The sport is moving in that direction. But you have races like Hardrock, and you have these races that are, it's not just the course itself, it's the terrain that the course is on, it's the altitude at which the course is, and there's all these extra elements that help make these, I mean, Hurt is a perfect example, all these extra elements that just make it so much more difficult that you could see one of these fast people show up and just not do well because there's so many other things. So I like hearing you talk about it in that way of like training specifically for the races with other races and really going for what that race needs out of a first place finish, someone to crush it with all these extra elements. Let's get to one more live question for Sabrina, then we'll do, of course, the quickie question quiz and our other new segment that we debuted last week, crew member of the week.
There's a question coming from an account that's Sabrina Stanley and Avery Collins, and people are asking if it is Avery, and Avery's saying it is Avery. So I'm going to ask the question just in case. So Sabrina Stanley and Avery Collins in the chat room asked, what would you change about your training in the San Juans to better your time last year at Hardrock 100?
Like I said, I think I just really am beating myself up or falling apart those last 15 miles. I pride myself in mental toughness, and I think I just let it slip away there. I started worrying about not how fast I could run this race, but who's going to catch me. And when that like mental shift happened, like I'm telling Avery, like, look back. Can you see her? Like, do I need to run faster or can I run slower? And so it's like asking for that permission to take it easy, and hoping he didn't see anybody when I really should have been, you know, racing the clock and not who's coming up behind me. So I really, really beat myself up over that. And so funny story, Avery was pacing me. We get to, I don't know, a mile from the finish. And we had been getting word at all the aid stations that the second female was, I don't know, an hour back, 2 hours back. And, so I wasn't stressing it too much, but I was still like psychotically, like, keep looking back just in case she has this push and she's going to catch us. And with a mile left, he goes, she's back there. You have to sprint. There's a female coming after you. You have to sprint. And I'm like, no, like, don't do this to me. He's like, Sabrina, you have to start sprinting right now. So we start just hauling towards the finish line, and my feet are just like shreds. My knee is not, I thought I had like seriously damaged my knee and all this stuff. And I keep telling him, like, look back. Like, how close is she getting? Is she sprinting, or can we stop now? And it turns out it was Michael Wardian, and he had seen his ponytail.
Oh.
And so, yeah, he gave me a really good scare that last mile. And Wardian passed me with like a block to go from the finish line, which I'm not going to sprint Michael Wardian to the finish. Like, he's crazy fast. So, yeah.
Yep, Michael Wardian, the guy that the next morning will wake up and run a 4:30 mile around the
exactly.
Silverton track.
He was at her here, and I passed him twice, and he was completely lost. So I felt like every time I passed him, he was like looking for directions. But he was super nice. He probably would have beat me by way more of a spread than he did if he hadn't. I don't know what he was doing, but
I mean, meanwhile, he's also on a jetliner doing the 7 marathons on the 7 continents. Yes. I hope he doesn't get lost there, because then we'd never find Michael Wardian. Like, where in the world is Wardian right now? A huge congrats, Sabrina, on crushing Hurt 100, Hardrock last year, all the races in 2018, and very excited to see what happens in 2019. Obviously, you've got a great backyard up there, and the Sen wants to train on, so it's going to be pretty cool to see what you do at Hardrock this year. You are a first-time guest of the show, and what we like to do with all of our first-time guests is a little segment called the Quickie Question Quiz. It's a series of rapid-fire questions. They're very easy. All you got to do is answer with the first thing that comes to your head, and we'll start this quick list of questions when you give us a thumbs up, and we'll just get right into it. There it is. What was your very first race?
Capital City Marathon, half marathon.
In Olympia?
Yeah. Yep.
I know that race. Good job, me. Favorite place to run currently?
Currently in our given spot, I'm going to say the main ski mountain here. I actually haven't ran it. Oh, is it one word answer? Sorry.
That's okay.
I just didn't really, we kind of moved 5 miles away from the mountain. We used to live on it. And so now I haven't been able over there too much. I've been running other spots. So that's my spot right now.
Road or trails?
Trails.
Bucket list race?
TDG.
Favorite running movie?
URA 100.
Guilty pleasure TV show?
Right now it's The Office.
Oh, that's a good choice. That's just a good TV show in general. Favorite pre-race meal?
Oatmeal.
Favorite post-race indulgence?
I'm not a foodie. I'll say a cheeseburger, but I there's nothing I crave really. Like I don't know. I'm fine with cereal.
And finally, what are your current running kicks, or what did you just win Hurt wearing?
The Lone Peaks 4, which I'm going to go off on this little rant. I've only ever ran hundreds in the Olympus, and if somebody had ever told me I'd run in anything else, I'd call them a liar. Like I have a stockpile of Olympuses that are like 6 or 7 deep from like 3 models back, and they stopped making them, and I have every size 9 that they've ever made. And so I'm like, oh, I'll start in the Lone Peaks and I'll switch over after 1 lap. And every lap that went by, my crew had them waiting for me, and I was completely fine. Like if you had told me that, I would have called you a liar, but I cannot believe I ran her in the Lone Peaks.
That's awesome. And congratulations. You passed the Quickie Question Quiz. That's amazing. Sabrina, again, just wonderful to have you on the show finally. Can you let our live audience know where they can find you on social media, stuff like that, in case they want to shut you out or if they have residual questions and everything?
Yeah. So Instagram is Sabrina Leanne Stanley, Facebook, Sabrina Stanley, and Twitter is Ultra Sabrina with an A.
Awesome. You guys know what to do. Go show Sabrina some love. Thank her for being on the show. It's just awesome to have her on finally, as I mentioned, long overdue. But we're not done with Sabrina. We're going to actually move into the post show here, the after show with our GR crew, our Patreon supporters. And if you would like to join us for our after show, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner for as little as $1 a month. It supports everything that we do, and it gets you get some cool perks on the back end, including our after shows with our guests. So you'll have access to all of the archived after shows, tonight's and the future episodes. So consider it if you have not already. And it is now time for our new segment that we've been doing called the Crew Member of the Week. Our GR crew, our viewers, we want to celebrate them. One of our big goals this year was to celebrate and lift up other people. And one thing that we love is our community. It's grown incredibly over the last 8 years since we started doing Ginger Runner. Almost, by the way, I think
44. Oh, Ginger Runner.
Ginger Runner started in January 11th, 2011. So we're just over our 8-year anniversary, which is pretty amazing. So we want to celebrate our community members with a little segment that we are calling the Crew Member of the Week. Yay! That did not behave how I anticipated it. It was supposed to do an animation. That did not. That is not an animation. That's too bad. It was cool when I tried it earlier today. Regardless, this week, our Crew Member of the Week goes to Amber Nixon. She's been a longtime supporter, a longtime viewer, and this last weekend, it sounds like training has been going less than stellar a little bit last year, but she's on the upkick, and she had a long run this last weekend and PR'd her 5K distance, which is a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, fastest 5K that she's ever run.
That she's ever run in the middle of her long run. And we celebrate people no matter where they are in their journey, whatever the distance is, whatever the accomplishment is. It's pretty cool to see people in our community just improving themselves and improving each other. And congratulations, Amber, on being our Crew Member of the Week. And congratulations on your PR within a long run. And we can't wait to see what happens next. So celebrate you this week. Yay. That is it for our show. Episode number 244 of Ginger Runner Live now comes to an end. We thank you very much for tuning into the show, not just to us, tonight live. And we encourage you to join us every Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for more Ginger Runner Live. Now, get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest. I know I am. If you're a Patreon Crew supporter, we'll see you guys in just a couple of seconds for the post show. That's it. Thanks. Bye.